The following program is being brought to you by Reign of Fire Radio, a media outreach arm of Reign of Fire Evangelical Ministries. Our commitment is to sponsor programs that will assist in living a Christian life and win others through teaching the finished work of Jesus Christ. Welcome to Delivered or Deceived with your host, Rand Berkey. Rand is a former cult member who now educates people on the dangers of these types of groups, as well as people who would seek to exploit and terrorize others. Rand has devoted his life to providing assistance to those who have been hurt. No one wants to be led through the wilderness by a guide who has never been there. He has, and his desire is that you will find yourself delivered and not deceived.
Hello everybody, this is Rand Berkey from Reign of Fire Evangelical Ministries. As on every broadcast, I like to set the stage by sharing one of the foundational scriptures for Reign of Fire Evangelical Ministries, as well as Reign of Fire Christian Radio. In Luke 4:17 through 19, it states, "And Jesus was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, 'The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord.'" Christ is the message, and I'm only one of the bearers of the message. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we left off at chapter 9, and I said 9b, which was the deeper mysteries of God. This is where I was on my second year. The second year was also the first year in residence at Emporia, Kansas. Now this is the end of the first year, and we're heading off into our interim year in the Way International in New Knoxville, Ohio. Now, New Knoxville, Ohio is a quaint little place. It's northwest of St. Mary's, Ohio. And you wouldn't think anything there. I mean, there's not even a traffic light, I think, in New Knoxville, Ohio. However, it was home of a very large cult that was in a number of different countries. I think it was like 51 different countries, as well as over the United States and in Mexico and Canada. At one time, it boasted a lot of members, over 100,000. Now it is just a shadow of what it used to be. Werewolf has also died back in the 1980s. And there's been an upheaval consistently through the leadership because of the power struggle that happened once Werewolf died. But for us, we're at Jerusalem, which is headquarters. Now, suggest that you go back. I had the first, actually it would be 10 recordings of the book, or else you can go and buy the book if you like something in your hand, or you can also download it from Amazon. So here we go. We left while it was daylight and arrived at headquarters about 6 in the morning on August 1st. Altogether, the headquarters had increased to encompass now more than 350 acres. As one would travel Werewolf Road, the first thing greeting you would be the Fountain of Living Waters in the front of Werewolf's home. The fountain was actually many fountains timed to music and lights, an engineering marvel, a testament to the Way and Werewolf. Everything done in the ministry is to be first class. Part of the Way believers' training is to have superb work ethic, and everything should be done at the best and with the best quality and attention to detail. After the fountain and the Werewolf home sat the Biblical Research Center of the BRC. This was the first building built for the ministry when it was in its infancy. The BRC is primarily used as a chapel and for special occasions and has some offices. one of which was the office of the Way Corps leader for the headquarters, who was Michael Fort. Beyond the driveway, or from the BRC, were houses of Howard and Imogene Allen, Dorothy Owens, who were the original members of the Board of Trustees. Behind these buildings was a driveway leading to the rest of the housing. Most of the housing was either double-wide trailers or prefab homes, housing some of the leadership, full-time staff, and interim and residence corps. Not all the leadership lived on the grounds. Some owned or rented homes in the surrounding areas. Just behind the BRC was another building that had been used for offices before the Outreach Service Center was built. It was used as housing for visitors who came in for special classes and events. Next to this was the motor pool where the way vehicles were taken care of and kept. To the south of it sits the courtyard and the barn. The courtyard was used for dances, and the barn was used as storage for the Way Corps luggage. The lower level housed werewolves' dogs, German short-haired pointers. Right behind the barn was a pond in which we could swim, but who had the time? There was a row of shrubs, and beyond that a basketball court where the first Rock of Ages was held in the early 70s. This was the main grounds, and a wooden fence surrounded them. Further north lay the rest of the farm, where the Rock of Ages was now held, at the far end of the Outreach Service Center building. On the other side of Werewolf Road was a dairy farm, and just north of that was the Way Woods. There was a paved road going back into the woods that led into some leaders' homes, including the Corps Chalet, where the Martindale family lived, and some guest housing where my parents had stayed during their visit. On the right side of the road was the House of His Healing Presence. Another road parallel to Werewolf Road had areas that were used during the Rock of Ages to entertain werewolves' guests. This road was closed during the Rock to all except those who had special passes. Werewolves' Bus was in the area. Down the road further was the site for the Word of the World Auditorium. This would be the dais for teaching the Word to the world. It was in various stages of completion at the time. Back out to Werewolf Road, you would go north until the road dead-ended into another. Turning right, you would travel about 100 yards to the entrance of the Outreach Service Center, housing most of the office and departments of the Way Ministry. This is also where Sunday night services, the 10:30 fellowships, and Wednesday, Sunday morning, and Corps night were held. During the week, it was where we ate, and during the Rock, it housed the bookstore. The other half of the Outreach Service Center was a warehouse. On either side of the dining room were reception areas that could be used to handle overflow seating during the special occasions. The Way also owned other farms in the area, as well as the New Bremen Performance Center and the Fine Arts and Historical Center in Sydney, Ohio, housing mostly wedding receptions and other special occasions. This is a brief view of the Way's property. I did not know the full extent of the Way's real estate, but it's quite extensive. With the exception of the original farm, all the properties purchased were from the donations and fees from the believers. We were to believe that this was all ours, but on the other hand, the Way taught that there were no members except the Board of Trustees. We had no legal rights to any of the property or any say in how the money was being spent in the Way. We arrived for work the first day of my interim year. Corps Week was the next week, with the Way Corps primary goal to get the grounds ready for the Rock of Ages. I would spend the first days in the Corps tents that were set up until I got our housing assignment. I was to report for work in the printing department at 8 a.m. After eating in the meal tent, I made my way to the Outreach Service Center and found where I was to go. I made my way to Tim's office, the supervisor in the printing department. After a brief meeting, he escorted me to the finishing department, where I would be working, I met Kurt, who would be my immediate supervisor. Kurt was a slight man who had dreams of being a professional golfer. Yet, like the rest of us in the way, his dreams would be realized only if his spiritual growth could be proven to the leadership. Spiritual growth, of course, amounted to the degree of obedience you paid to what was required of you by the leadership in all areas of your life. Kurt showed me the work area I would be responsible for and what I would do. I would be in charge of all the handwork, proofing the printing from the presses, and costing out what the labor would be. This was something new for the department. What would be used was not the actual cost, but industry standards. For example, I and two other 13th Corps people worked in the department full time. We were paid $100 a month, plus room and board. This was not even considered a salary, but a student grant. We would work our jobs an average of 45 hours a week. Our pay scale was anywhere from $6.65 an hour to over $21 an hour, depending on the jobs that we were doing and the equipment we were running. Now you got to remember, ladies and gentlemen, this was in the early 80s. So $665 was a little bit of money, but $21 was a whole lot of money. I often had in-residence corps working for me. They paid $4,300 a year for their training, yet I was charging $6.65 an hour for their labor. All of these figures were turned in, but I don't know where they were used. If these figures were used for bookkeeping, it would be very misleading. I settled into learning my duties, but this did not last long, because Corps Week and the Rock of Ages, which meant I would be given a new assignment for the next 2 weeks. Since the way Corps were responsible for hosting the Rock of Ages for the Wild Masters and the Believers, those assignments superseded the needs of the different departments. The supervisors for my department tried to get me out of my assignment because they felt I was needed more in the printing department, but to no avail. I reported to my new duty as executive security for the Board of Trustees. Corps Week was a special time reserved for all Way Corps to get together. All were required to attend unless they were in extreme circumstances. Since the Corps members were also responsible for putting on the Rock of Ages, each Corps person was responsible for an assignment for those 2 weeks, and security would be mine. I was required to meet with Bill, who was the director of security, and the others, which had been hand-chosen to be on the security team. This was the Friday before everything kicked into high gear. It is explained that we would be responsible for different areas, primarily where the Board of Trustees would be frequenting. The main tent, where most of the activities would be held, would be the busiest. We were shown different passes and the car stickers we were to be aware of to allow people to the backstage areas and other places we would be guarding. It was impressed upon us the gravity and importance of our jobs. After our first meeting, I talked with Bill for a little while. I found out he had been a demolitions expert in Vietnam and had lost one of his legs during the mission. I asked him what his job entailed for the duration of the 2 weeks. His answer intrigued me and sent a chill up my spine as well. His responsibility was, at different times during the day and night, to go through the backstage area and underneath the stage to sweep for explosives. He told me because of the negative press and others wanting to stop the truth being held forth by the ministry, there were those who would want to destroy us. There had been death threats over the past few years that could not be ignored. He would change his routine so no one would know when he was checking. I left the conversation with a soberness I'd never felt before. The others on security and I had the most important people in the way placed in our hands. I knew if it came down to it, I would be